this session, our first speaker is Matej, Silecky, who's a junior in interdisciplinary studies, and he is both a human-centered design and a historical and modern city participant, and he's going to tell us about why all the world is a stage.
And I'm going to, if you guys want to, I'll tell you when your time is nearing with these little signs.
Oh, okay. Oh, I better move quickly then. Oh. So yeah, as he said, hi, I'm Matej Silecky. I'm an interdisciplinary studies major. I'll be incorporating the two course threads, historical and modern city, and the human-centered design. So, as Shakespeare so profoundly put it, all the world's a stage, comparing life to the cataloging of man's 7 ages of man: infant, schoolboy, lover, soldier, justice, pantaloon, and old age. Life is, in Shakespeare's words, a stage where every man must play a part. So these are the courses that I took for the historical and modern city. I took 5 courses overall. One of them actually overlaps. Landscape architecture 130. I provided information on the city design on modern day, creating profound stages of the opportunity for charismatic individuals and developers. LA 170 and 171, they both bring in a historical aspect of design, defining the original design of space that molds a community and furthers into a city. Very interestingly, there's a lot of discussion in both of them as to how these spaces could formally, well, informally be considered stages in the modern day. And these stages still exist today, like our public parks and public forums. For human-centered design, as I said, 171 is the one course that overlaps. The other two, Art 23 AC and Theater Dance Performance Studies 60, they offer their own interpretation of what could be considered a stage. And they both share a common concept of segregation of space that becomes influential in understanding the interpretation of design. So today, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more about public space, but more specifically about public space and performance space. So we have interesting segments of public space that really turn into performance space, and that's how we as humans design that space to meet our goals and desires. So what are these spaces and what do we do with them? Interestingly, we often find the design of space to present the individual with a stage. As many actors, dancers, choreographers, etc. would say, a stage is a place for people to connect with others, share ideas and passions, vulnerability, and the list goes on. So even if we don't think of living as acting per se, in many ways it is, because we're constantly modifying our spaces around us for our activities. And one of those, an example of that, may be the Berkeley Market, which some of you may have actually attended and visited. It's really an interpretation of space. The everyday market is a stage of interaction and cultural communication. It's something that most people take for granted, the common activity of the public space being used for sale and talk. So it's a cultivation process, creating the landscape that supports such a gathering place for these kinds of activities. It takes a lot of knowledge of the topography, the environmental system, the growing community, and it's not always true that cities are built to have places specifically for a public market or something of the sort. In turn, like these places are actually created from the people's interpretation of size of a road or size of a certain particular park to have this kind of interaction with each other. Another example is actually dance. And dance is really interesting because it's something profound and intricate, and we all have been people who have gone to a theater. Hopefully we've all experienced that, and we're blessed with the really kind of a new perspective of dance when it's brought to a new space, to a different space. But new perspective isn't really the right phrase. It's actually a new interpretation of space. Where the public market can take up one space, somewhere else, space can be occupied by dance and other activities. And dance is a medium where thoughts are provoked and ideas are shared, where we have a physical visual communication rather than the visual oral communication that we have in a marketplace. So it can share something completely different. It can really share that emotion and that passion that goes along with dance that we so often see in the theaters. So the reason I have pictures of Cuba is over the last summer, I was actually on vacation in Cuba. And it's really interesting to bring in the kind of experience as a tourist, as well as somebody who dances, to kind of see a ballet class being taught in a public open promenade in Havana. And I had walked this promenade several times over the past week, and this was the one day where it was something completely different. These guys have never been here before from the last times I walked. And this one particular day brought a completely different understanding of what this space could potentially be. And to have that in a country where dance is so well known, I mean, the Cuba School for Ballet is probably one of the most famous in the world, actually. It's very inspirational as a tourist coming to a new land like this, someplace that so many of us haven't really been allowed to go to, as well as for kids, for children, and for adults. It's something really inspiring for them to see this. And on Wake Up Waltz is actually a project that has been going on in Chicago for quite a little while now. They've been working together to create dances and use building roofs to display a variety of movement to attract the sight of commuting workers. So often people are trapped into their daily routines, and they really are trying to help break people away from that and have them experience new things and give them different visions of what the space around them could really be, rather than the strict structure that they live in. And actually, I have a few videos, and I don't know if it's okay to... Oh, I'm not even connected to the internet. Oops. So, would you like me to... I can save it for later if people are interested, just because I don't want to have to go through air bears and stuff right now. Yeah, I should have done that. I'm sorry. I have other videos too, but to go back to dance still, there's another few examples that I have. In Kyiv, Ukraine, and in Wuhan, China, we have a different group of people, retirees and elderly people, that are gathering in, for example, Ukraine. They're gathering in the subways and in the underpasses, and in Wuhan, as you all may be aware, they're gathering in the streets and everything, and dancing and sharing their time together. And it's something very interesting, because as these other spaces are taken up by the public market and by young people dancing and stuff and doing at these other places, has to be this kind of segregation of space between young and then the senior. And it doesn't have to be this way, but it's just the way that our cultures are so often created. So it's very interesting to look at these two pictures, especially of Ukraine, where people are enjoying their time in this totally different interpretation of what the subway, what the underpass could really be. It could be a place of cultural communication, and dancing is often seen as this cultural cultivator. And for some cultures, it's actually considered to be a language of the world. So it's a very interesting intersection for public space and performance space. And then finally, in regard to large spaces in the real world, we have the most powerful tool, protest. And again, I have example from Ukraine and Hong Kong. Ukraine, about 3 months ago, as some people may be aware, has been in protest against the president of the country. And since then, he's been overthrown. Well, he's actually fled the country. But there's a lot that's been happening in Russia and with Russia and Ukraine. But about 3 months ago, they actually took the traditional Christmas tree that's always in the center, and they decided to create make it a symbol of protest. And once again, it's kind of a reiteration of taking something and making it something else, taking something traditional and making it and creating a different interpretation of what it could really mean. And in Hong Kong, I mean, it's kind of easy to see. There's lots of stuff on the ground. It's forcing people to pay attention to where they're walking, as well as dragging their attention to reading what people are trying to say, what people are trying to protest against. And it's kind of as well as a different interpretation of space, it's forcing the individuals to pay attention. And it's a real design mechanism as well. So as I said with the videos, I have several, but I'll save them for if people are interested at the end. I'll hook up the internet. So finally, we come to the internet, which is what I was just talking about. It's another public space that is completely human-centered and designed. Although two-dimensional, it's a two-dimensional representation of whatever you want on a flat screen. It has become probably the primary source of communication and connection. And it's a space where we can create whatever we want and have kind of the intentions of whatever we want. In every single case, we're communicating with people all over the world. So in that space that you create, like your Facebook profile, you're really creating your own stage. You're creating your performance space. It's where you get to be whatever you want, where you get to provoke whatever you want in others. It's an elaborate use of space where communication is every element. You know, it's a virtual world, but at the same time, it's a stage. And I've been working on a project for Big Ideas, and it's called Project Artreach. It's kind of a real communication and connecting tool, incorporating crime mapping online with the community to try to work on a project that I'm actually going to explain a little bit later in the presentation, where artists and the community come together to work on beautifying and interpreting the space that they live in to also reduce crime. So not only is the community coming together as a whole and really starting to understand each other and have this close-knit family feeling, but they're also reducing the amount of crime that's in the area. So in this world that's designed landscape, the landscape is meant to appeal to many forms of individuals, and it's comprised of all these man-made features that are meant to influence in some way or another. And the landscape is designed with the same way, with reasons, the same way that the computer and cyberspace and theaters are even designed. Within these spaces is the supposed freedom that they're, there's really a supposed freedom, but there's a directed manner that's associated with them. When we go to a theater, wow, I can't talk now. We're free to do as we please. We have the intention that we're free to do as we please. But really, we're directed in the expectation of manner and attention that's brought by the design of the theater. You're not going to go to the Bolshoi Theater in Russia, you know, in sweatpants and a tank top. You're expected to be mannered, you're expected to pay attention, and you're expected to be silent when you go to a theater. You know, and that's kind of brought in by the design of such a place. It's very aesthetically powerful, but it's designed in that way. So on the internet as well, we have kind of this segregation of space and kind of blurring of the lines in what design is. And I'll just go really quickly. It's really interesting to see the segregation in websites such as like dating websites. We have dating websites for white, for Caucasians, for African Americans, for Asians, for Jewish, for Muslim, everything and anything under the sun. But what you don't really see is the combination, that multicultural combination in the dating website. You have dating websites like Match.com, but if you actually pay attention to them, even though the general public is allowed to create a profile, there's so many rules, like regulations, that go into creating the public profile that certain groups are not as present in those online public spaces. So there's a real blurring of the lines in connection and communication that happens. And it's something that I really want to bring to people's attention, just because there's a real historical, what's the word I'm looking for? It was on the tip of my tongue. Connection, I'll just go with that, to the designing of landscapes and parks. Frederick Law Olmsted, who was one of the co-designers with Calvert Vaux, who designed Central Park, as well as many other parks around the world, the intention was to segregate the upper class from the lower class just based off of manners and the intention of what the park was supposed to be used for. So the lower class would observe the upper class as they would, wander, meander through, and gander at the landscape in this very mature and mannerful style. And it was considered to be a learning space because the lower class was supposed to learn from these people. I don't really have a lot of time, so I won't really go over this one, but I will go to this. I actually did a recent project on a Ryoanji garden in Japan, and it's kind of this question of what is expected and what is the interpretation of space, because it's a Zen garden. That's what we call it today. But what is a Zen garden, really? Like, where did that term come from? The Japanese never called it a Zen garden. Oh, so, again, where did it come from? We have the Western movement, so we have this Westernization that came in. And outsiders started to call these gardens Zen. But one thing that always occurs is there's never a real understanding of what Zen is. And there's so many interpretations and understandings of what the stones could symbolize that nobody really has a clue. The only thing that happens is that everybody is able to come together and communicate on these topics. And people can agree and disagree, but the landscape in general is meant to really connect everybody, no matter what your interpretation is. So this is the project I wanted to talk about in the last minute that I have. This is pretty much, there's a community very close to Havana that Havana has kind of really gone down in the dumps, over the years. And really quickly, these people, this community really were down to eating banana skins to survive. And there was a lot of crime, and increased crime in the area. And what they did is they pretty much gathered the community and created, on the left you'll see a mural, and it looks seamless. It looks like one artist may have done this. But really, in truth, several artists worked on this one part of this wall. And it's all their interpretations of what the previous artist was doing and their interpretation of what they felt the community was, and then they drew it on the mural. So it's really interesting to see this kind of seamless design happening. And on the other picture, we actually have an abandoned water tank. And what they did is they used this tank to bring the community together. It's used for eating, for meals, for dance, for music, and everything else that the community may need. So it really is their like community center. What's interesting is that here in the United States, we wouldn't think of taking a water tank and using it for this kind of community need. And that's kind of really where the blurring of the lines comes in, as well as this, this reimagining of what space can really be. So with that, I kind of wanted to connect it in with just traveling and the kind of communication that we have just off of activities that we can do together. So taking all the pictures from the beginning with the market and how the protests, dancing, all these activities, we can connect all across the world in some way, shape, or form, no matter what the landscape is or what we're using. There's some place, somewhere, that we can use to combine it all and have a real kind of multicultural community. So with that, I just want to say thank you. It's my dog back home. So, yeah. And it's a good thing I didn't have the internet to play those videos, because this would have been a lot longer. So, thank you. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I think we'll do Matej in the last session. What we did was we had all the questions at the end. So
cool.
Let's do that again.
Because you're all designers talking to each
Yeah,
other.
so you can talk together and we talk to you, and it worked really well. So let's try that again.
All right.